So it's the 7th of July today. Sorry about that. That weird noise you just heard was my phone ringing. I took the call, was a little bit suspicious. It said it was from Sainsbury's Cafe and an 0800 number. But there was a very nice lady who told me that because I'd left some feedback on the Nectar Card app, I'd won £500 and that it had already been accredited to my app and was there for me to spend. I was a little bit suspicious, as you might be. We often get those scam calls, etc. But I kept my cool this time and I wasn't rude, and I checked my app and indeed I have an extra £500 available to spend. So I'm not quite sure what to do about that, apart from spend it, of course, buy something nice. But anyway, back to the tree. This is a Japanese maple that I've grown from seed, and I think it was 2017, 2018, so it's about 4 years old, 5 years old from seed. In fact, I'm fairly certain what's left of the label says 2018, so I think the seed would have been sown in 2017, which would make it 5 years old. It's got a reasonable girth now, and it's been grown and chopped and grown and chopped, so I'm trying to create a broom style tree. I did lose some initial footage. We're going to jump back in time to May, when I gave it its first trim, and sadly lost the footage from that. And I'll insert the footage I have got here. Okay, so there we have it. The tree's had a darn good chop back to a kind of framework. I do have a bunch of pieces all emanating from this one spot on the trunk though, which is a little bit annoying, because I'm going to have to lose them or get an unsightly bulge, which I don't want an unsightly bulge. But I think if I lose, I'm going to lose some three-dimensionality, but I'm going to have to do it. So I'm going to remove that one, and these two that are coming out of the front, and this one that's coming out at the back. So yeah, that has robbed it of a little bit of three-dimensionality, but if I put a piece of wire on that branch and move it down, I think that'll help somewhat. I mean, I'm hoping for a broom, you know, a fairly standard broom tree that's oh boy, George, what am I trying to say? More natural in style. So I don't mind that I have a bit of a T branch here, but I did have 6 branches all coming from the single spot there, which was a bit too much. But now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this fairly thick gauge, about 1.5 millimeters, very loosely on this branch. And I'm just going to move it down ever so slightly. That wire is really quite loose, so the branch should be able to thicken a fair amount without it digging in, which is good. Okay, so that's my initial setup. There we go. This tree was 2018, what's left of the label says, and I think that was the first time it was potted up into this, so it's probably grown from seed 2017, maybe 2016. There we go. we'll come back and see this in a few weeks' time and see how it's responded to its chopping. Of course the tree has grown quite a bit since then, and I'm going to give it another trim now, and I'm going to trim it back quite hard in places, not so much in others. I do want to get movement in the branches, so this isn't going to be a classical broom, you know, all radiating beautifully. It's going to be more of a natural looking tree in this kind of size. I find as I'm moving along, although I like the classical Japanese styles, I also like to emulate more of the trees that I see in nature, so I'm less concerned about things like bar branches, especially as in this case we have a branch to the side and this one is now going off to the back, so it's not as obvious that it's a bar branch. If you look around in nature, you often see trees with 3, 4 or even 5 branches emanating from the same spot on the trunk. So a little bit of trimmage, and I'm going to remove now these pieces that are growing directly out of the trunk, which have helped to fatten it a little, but will also create larger scars the bigger they get. And I already have some big-ish scars that I can live with, but I don't want them to get any bigger. So that's too long, too straight. As I've said in other videos, long straight pieces kind of evoke young trees reaching for the light. Older trees tend to have a lot more movement in their branches, reflecting you know, that they've grown in different directions over different years, reaching for the light, if that makes sense. Okay, there we go. Bit lopsided in this direction. Again, that's partly because I have, hate to say it, too many trees. So sometimes they get a little bit crowded on the benches, and that can shade out a little bit of light sometimes. So it's the 22nd of November, and after a very dry period, we've now had a very wet period, so I've decamped from the bottom of the garden back up to the patio area to do my filming, because the lawn is just going to become a quagmire if I'm wandering up and down any more than I have to. So I'll be filming from here for the foreseeable future. This Japanese maple that I've grown from seed, in case you missed the beginning bit of this video, which there you are. I'm talking rubbish again. Start that sentence again. This Japanese maple hasn't grown very much since the last time I filmed it. Indeed, it's just sat and done very little. But it's also not noticed that we're in November yet. It's almost entirely still green. There may be the odd touch of colour on the tips of a few of the leaves, but for the most part it still thinks it's summer and not quite reached autumn yet. How that will affect it next spring, I don't know. It's another tree that needs turning more often. If I show you the back view, and you can see what I mean. Oh well, back on the bench, and we'll have a look at it when it has got some autumn colour. Okay, so canning for scale. It's the 1st of December today, and we had our first frost last night. Well, it went down to 0 degrees. My wife said she had to scrape the car when she went out at 6:30 this morning. I left the house at 7, and I didn't. Yeah, this tree is turning though, finally. We're finally seeing some colour, so I'm going to call this a day on this video before it becomes far too long for you guys to want to watch it. But I will show you another tree that came from the same batch of seed, which I believe it was 2015, but I'm not entirely sure. So this little maple went into this little pot obviously quite some time ago, and has hence remained nice and small. It's some really nice movement, and well, I think some nice taper too. But yes, the same little packet of seed that I had. I think it was a Christmas present, might have been a birthday present. My birthday's Christmas Day, so you know they all kind of blur a bit. But yeah, and this one obviously has done the autumn thing. In fact, this did the autumn thing right back at the beginning of October, and has hung on to these leaves really well. Says he's just knocked one off with his finger, but yeah, interesting contrast between seeds sown in the same batch and one grown for size, or one grown to be a much bigger size rather than the other. Enough rambling. Do all the usual YouTube things. Do the liking, the subscribing, the commenting. Most of all, though, please stay safe, everybody.